If you're in the mental health industry and want to grow your impact, your reach, and your organization, you need to be at the Mental Health Marketing Conference. This October 7th through 9th, join hundreds of marketers, executives, and clinicians for 3 powerful days of inspiration, strategy, and networking. From AI to storytelling, from branding to market strategy, you'll leave with actionable ideas, meaningful connections, and access to industry experts. It's so much more than a conference, it's a community. Visit mhmarketing.org to learn more and grab your ticket today. Attend in person in Franklin, Tennessee, just south of Nashville, or attend online and see me as one of the keynotes. And use discount Joe to get an extra 10% off any ticket. Again, that's mhmarketing.org and use promo code Joe to get an extra 10% off any ticket. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1248. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I'm so excited that you are here with me today. You may have noticed we've been interviewing some people that, aren't quite in the business world, aren't quite in the counseling world, but have done some really interesting things. You'll want to look back at the rest of this series because our guest today has just done some amazing things. We have Fiona Oakes with us today, and Fiona is an elite marathon runner who holds 4 Guinness World Records, including being the fastest woman to run a marathon on all 7 continents, plus the North Pole. The subject of the film Running for Good and her book of the same name, Fiona also runs Tower Hill Stables Animal Sanctuary for the past 30 years, where she cares for around 400 rescue animals. An honorary patron of the Vegan Society, Fiona has been a vegan for over 50 years. Fiona, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, I am so excited to have you today. We're kind of talking about endurance mindset as part of this, and we'll get to talking also about your work with animals. But tell me, how did you first really get into pairing the love of what you do in running and with something that you care about in the world, and that's animals?
Desperation, really.
Okay.
Obviously, my journey has always been advocacy for animals in whichever way I can. And I think it grows organically with you. So I started by being vegan at a very, very young age. None of my family were even vegetarian at the time. I didn't understand the word vegan. I'd never heard it, but I understood the concept of compassion and empathy for animals. After a few years, it was always probably my dream to have a place where I could nurture animals. I won't say a sanctuary because honestly, back in that time, there weren't many animal sanctuaries around. There was no role models, literally. In 1996, I did achieve that dream. We managed to acquire a small piece of land, and I started Tower Hill Stables Animal Sanctuary. But after a few years of actually rescuing animals, I realized that I'm changing their lives, but they are a tiny minority. I want to advocate for the billions that are out there that I can never physically touch or help. And that would be by promoting veganism in a positive, proactive, and peaceful way, which was very difficult at the time. I mean, for the younger generation, they forget that there was a time kind of before social media when you didn't have a voice. You literally had to use the mainstream media to get a message out there nationally or internationally. And it's very, very difficult because you've got to do something that they were interested in. You've got to engage them. And I didn't honestly have anything. I mean, I'm not a super well-connected person. I come from a very, very basic background. Mother was a nurse. Father was a coal miner. So I just didn't have any of those privileges of a ready-made platform. Why did I choose running? Well, it kind of chose me. And it's a very, very strange thing for me to have kind of built a kind of platform with, because in my formative years as a teenager, I had a lot of orthopedic surgeries, and the outcome was that I was told that I would never walk properly, let alone be able to run. And funnily enough, I'm actually really remembering that time right now because my mum is about to have a knee replacement. So I've been taking her to clinics, for anaesthetic pre-admission clinics, and I am seeing a lot of people on crutches and limping, and that's exactly where I was like 40 years ago. I literally was non-weight bearing for probably 2 or 3 years, and I think that I have been so full throttle, go, 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 grab any opportunity, that I haven't had much time to sit back and think, why did I do that? And indeed, during the lockdowns, with the COVID period that we had in the UK, I'm not sure what it was like in other countries. Rather than being confrontational on social media, I used it as a time of contemplation. Obviously, spent a lot of time running and introducing myself to someone that I'd never really fully met before, which was me. Literally thinking about why I'd made decisions, because they hadn't been real contrived decisions. It had been more reactions to an environment that I wasn't happy with, not my own, but the environment humans provide for animals. So back in the early noughties, I was desperate to think of a way of promoting veganism because I knew I was strong, fit, healthy on a plant-based diet, but I couldn't share that with anyone else. And in the UK at the time, we had a long distance runner. We still have a Paula Radcliffe. And she'd moved up from a track career to running on the road, particularly the marathon. And she just started to do very, very well in the event, broken the world record. And I realized that athletic event had all the hashtags that I was trying to promote in terms of veganism. It was considered brutal, both mentally and physically. You've got to be strong, have self-belief, inner strength, passion, and a really, really strong body to be able to endure the training to come through with the results. And I thought, well, if I could just compete in and hopefully complete a marathon, then that proves positive that as a vegan, it is not prohibitive to anything, including the most extreme endurance events on the athletic calendar. And that's when I took to marathon running. And I literally, it was before a time when you could really Google search sub-3 training program. You literally, it was all trial and error, an awful lot of trials and a load of errors. And 2 years later, I was literally standing on the start line of the London Marathon next to Paula Radcliffe on the elite start. I don't know how it happened. I still don't know how it happened because, strangely enough, when Keegan wrote to me and said he wanted to make the film Running for Good, I was very reluctant because initially he wrote and said, he'd made 2 films, Cowspiracy and What the Health, and they were all the negative sides of animal agriculture. And now he wanted to advocate for something positive and particularly someone positive. And I'm thinking, well, who is it? How can I help? And he said, well, it's you. And I was like, what? You want to make a film about me? That's kind of strange. But I went along with it. I'm not a very self-promoting kind of person, but I did realize it was a great opportunity for the animals, for advocating for them. But indeed, I've always been very reluctant to watch the film. Indeed, when I actually went to the premiere of the film, I was kind of hiding away at the back of the auditorium, and Rich Roll was there, who is a big name in
yeah.
And he was like, great film, Fiona, what do you think to it? And I said, I don't know, I haven't actually watched it yet. And he was like, what? You've come to like LA and you've got a film about it, you haven't even seen it? I said, well, I trust Keegan implicitly. He's got the talent. I'm just the subject matter. And I was reluctant to actually watch it there and then. But I realized I kind of calmed myself down. Rich dragged me by my hair and sat me next to him and said, right, you're going to watch it next to me. There's no getting out of this. And I thought, calm down, Fiona. It can't be that bad. You've got Keegan's talent. You've got all the cinematography of the desert. It can't be that bad. And then I kind of saw myself in one scene kind of limping along. And I realized, oh, no, you really don't look like a pretty sight when you run. But I've got an effect. It's effective. What I do is effective. It meets the goals that I want to meet for the animals. So, hey ho, can't look perfect. And that's how I got to running. Everything in my life is about advocating for the animals in some way, shape or form, whether it just be simply choosing compassion piece on my plate, or whether obviously the main thing is the actual sanctuary where I care for animals. A retained firefighter. I was, dubious about going into firefighting because I got my hands full with looking after the sanctuary, and I was actually just kind of jogging down the road one day, and a guy pulled up next to me and said, "You look pretty fit. Have you ever considered being a firefighter?" And I thought, no, it's not something I wake up every morning and think, "Oh, I must checklist, must become a firefighter today." I live in a very rural community where we work a retained service where you're not at the fire station all the time. And when I actually got into it, I'm kind of that kind of very physical kind of person. I enjoy that kind of activity. But I realized that even then, it's going to take quite a lot of my time to meet the commitments of this. But it does advocate for the animals because it's not a forum that where you expect a vegan woman to be in this challenging, grueling career of firefighting. So yeah, that's if I'm going to do something, it's got to have an angle where I can be positive for animals. And it's the same with the running. I don't consider myself an athlete, or I consider myself somebody advocating for animals via athletics. That's all
Mm.
it is.
I love how, it's sort of like, you paused after to say, okay, let's think about the intentionality or lack thereof. How important do you think that is for anyone with goals to just go towards the thing they're passionate about, figure out what's the way to get there, versus on the other side, there's the over planning, like, here's my 3-year plan, my 5-year plan. It sounds like you just literally ran towards it.
Yeah.
Speak to that planning versus under planning, and how you think that helps people get to goals faster or slower.
Well, I think that the positivity with me with the sport or anything that I do is a passion and a belief that I have. It's in my fundamental core root. I want to help animals, so I don't literally sit down and contrive things. If I see an opportunity, and they are very very rare, like tiny little lights in a darkness, I will grab it and go with it. I won't think of the negative side of things. I'll only think of the positives, the good I can possibly do. It's like that with my running career. It's kind of developed organically. So originally, I just started off by wanting to compete and complete a marathon. Then it was like, hey ho, how do I get to that front grid where I can literally promote veganism better? I want to be on the start line with the best in the world. Then I want to be on the start line with the best in the world, but I'm still not promoting veganism because no, I can't go around and tell everyone, hey, I'm on the start line with like Haile Selassie and Paula Radcliffe and Susan Chepkamai, and I'm vegan. So that's when I started the vegan running club like 20 years ago, purely to have that word written on my vest, advocating for animals for all to see. So if they see you running up the mile in 20th place in the London Marathon, you can't introduce yourself. You've only got a number on your shirt, but you've got that word that people are subliminally then thinking, hey, vegan, elite enclosure, coming out on top, you know, um, and it's just about being creative. So after I'd kind of done as much as I could with like quick times and made world's major marathons, I kind of dropped down a band and started to win marathons globally, break course records, generate a bit of interest like that. Then I went into kind of these ultra stage marathons like that are considered really, really tough, but not just for the running side of it, for the survival side of it. So a week-long stage race in the Sahara Desert, carrying all your supplies, running 250 kilometers in, terrain that is hostile, temperatures which are hostile and conditions which are brutal. And I've done quite a few of those. So it's about literally, I'm not thinking, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I've no goals. It's just like, I'm only as good as my last run or whatever. And thinking, well, that's like a stepping stone to the next achievement. I don't plan things. I mean, I'll be honest with you, life's too short. I just go for it. If I think it's doable, I will do it, or I will drop trying to do it. And I think that ultimately you're the only person that can, especially in these kind of extreme kind of situations, like if you're in Antarctica. I mean, I'd never run in the really cold weather before. I'd never run in minus 40 degrees. I really hadn't gone out there adequately. I wouldn't say physically prepared. I mean, I'm fit, but I'd gone out there with this passionate belief that what I'm doing might just help the animals. So I'm going to literally go for it full on. And I think that that's the kind of passion. I wouldn't possibly have got the results I've got if I'd have just been running for a quick time in a race or wanted a trophy or wanted a medal. It wouldn't have worked for
Yeah.
me. It's life and death to me, but not my life and death. Well, in some of them it has been, but it's the life and death of animals. One animal might be saved by somebody might see what I am doing and how I've done it and be interested in it and then follow my path. And that's the belief. It's very kind of you never quite know if you're making that difference. You just have to believe all the time that you just
Mm.
might be.
Man, when you're talking about the pandemic and the time of reflection and rather than kind of engaging in social media and all that people did, I'm wondering, as you're doing these ultra marathons and extreme conditions, like what are some of the darker points, or like where does your head go, or like, what kind of flow state, or like what's the inner workings of Fiona's brain as you're doing these long distances?
I think it's always that focus on why you're doing it. Obviously, there are times I'm not superhuman by any stretch of the imagination. I have the same doubts that other people have. It's learning with experience how to overcome those, finding a way through. I do prepare meticulously for anything that I'm doing, but not in the necessary way that other people prepare. So I look at a race and I don't look at the disadvantages I've got, which is a bad knee, not much time to train. I certainly don't have a coach, couldn't get anyone to coach me because of my veganism. So there's lots of negatives, but there are positives that I can use that other people very often overlook. So I run big mileage. I mean, that's basically the key fundamental thing of any long distance race. Rather than buying the gadgets and fixating on like what gear you're going to wear. Yes, it's relatively important. The main thing is actually going out there and doing the miles, which some people kind of overlook for the prettiest side of things. I run over distance. I manage myself very well. I put myself into very dark zones in training. I literally go to get the most out of myself every session I
What do you
do.
mean dark zones in your training? That sounds interesting.
Where you're really suffering and you're doubting yourself, but you're still pushing on. Also physically, if you don't train hard, you are not going to race hard, because when you get out to a race, you're going to be pushing yourself to your maximum. If you're not used to pushing yourself to the limit in training, you're going to falter and you're going to doubt in the race. You do doubt in races, but you think to yourself, you've got ways of tricking mind games to get round things. So if you're in a marathon and you've started off at your maximum pace, my maximum pace around about 10 miles an hour, 16 kilometers an hour. So I'm looking for a long 2:30 in a marathon. You might you get to like half. They do say halfway in a marathon is 20 miles, even though the race is 26 miles, because those last 10k 6 miles are brutal. That's when you're really starting to falter. You tend to put yourself in a different place, on a kind of a training route that you know you can do. So you're thinking, hey ho, this is only to the church and back, or round the big lake, and literally you're on autopilot, always with that goal in mind. The animals, you're doing this for the animals. Look down at my vest, I see vegan runners on there. I remember why I'm out there for them, and the pain that they're suffering. My pain is kind of transient, it's going to pass. Theirs is never going to pass unless we change our mindset as a species. So that's what fuels me. I think you always go that bit harder if you're doing something for someone else than if you're doing it for yourself. That's honestly what does push me on.
Do you want to expand your private pay caseload? Check out Thrizer. Thrizer helps clients better navigate their out-of-network benefits and takes the entire burden of insurance off of them. That means no more super bills, no more insurance calls, and the best part, no more long reimbursement waits. Chances are you're providing a super bill to your clients. Super bills can be extremely overwhelming and challenging for your clients to navigate, let alone needing to wait months for that reimbursement check. Thrizer provides automatic claim submissions, manages claims end-to-end, and the best part, allows clients to just pay a copay for your session, while Thriver covers the rest of your rate up front and waits for the reimbursement on your client's behalf. This is called Thrizer Pay and is already helping thousands of clients access therapy without needing to be out hundreds of dollars while waiting for reimbursement. It's the best way to make your services more accessible and increase your private pay caseload, hands down. Use the promo code POTP for a free trial. That's POTP, Practice of the Practice, POTP. You'll receive waived credit card fees for your first $2,500 in charges. Time to thrive with Thrizer in 2025. thrizer.com/partners/Joe. Again, that's thrizer.com/partners/Joe. I'm thinking about therapists that run counseling practices and they're passionate about trauma work or foster kids or, people having healthy marriages or, whatever work they're doing. And they don't always figure out an outlet to, okay, I care about this issue. How do I grow the issue, not just my counseling practice? What would you say when people are trying to explore, how do I take this thing that I love, that I'm passionate about? For you, that's animals, and maybe they're not a runner, but like, what are ways that they can think through how they can do something that's going to give more of a spotlight on the thing they care about?
I think it's basically finding something that you have an ability. Don't force the issue. Don't look to other people always for ideas. Go do something that you think you can be relatively effective. Even it's, you know what, sometimes change can come in all different shapes and forms. A passing conversation for me with someone could have as much impact as any marathon that I've ever run, if it's the right person with the right influence. Don't beat yourself up and always think how little you're doing. Realize that even if you only appear to be doing a little, it could be having great impact. And find balance as well. I mean, I think people very often in today's society, they've lost balance. They think it's wrong to feel down. They think it's wrong to feel grief, or wrong to feel sad, or wrong to feel tired. But it isn't. It's like anything in life. Life is just based on a model. And it doesn't matter what you're doing, the model doesn't change for me. I mean, and so do you know what? I honestly find it very, very hard to speak about anyone else's life. I'm too entrenched in my own. Everyone is different, and everyone finds different ways of advocating for things. It could be by silence, by doing nothing, could be the greatest way of advocating. Rather than speaking out and always being vocal. I'm not very good at speaking. I'm very good at acting and doing, but it's very personal to me what I do. I mean, I do find it very easy to punish myself and hurt myself. I don't mean harm myself. I mean push myself. But I find it impossible to expect that of others. I don't project that on others. I don't particularly wish my life on others because it's not an easy life that I lead. I have very high expectations of myself on a daily basis. I never take a day off. I get up at 3:30 in the morning and I start work, and I finish probably about 8-9 o'clock at night. I don't take a lot of sleep, and what I do is I don't actually rest in between. But I find different, like I said, with balance. So if I'm running, then I've done a run just now, then I sit down to do a podcast, then I go and do something physical, which is looking after the animals. The one thing I have learned, though, and I always say to people, please don't expect life to be perfect, because it isn't going to be. I hope it is, and I wish it could be for you, but learn to identify the moments that are perfect and live for them. So for me today, out on the seawall, the sun came out and it'd been quite windy and raining, and then you feel the warmth on your face, you look up, the tide's in. That is the perfect moment. And that's what makes life worth living. But I try not to get too entrenched in the suffering. I think people spend too long on social media. I don't do anything on social media. I have no presence whatsoever on there. I mean, a little bit, here and there, but I drew away from that many years ago, because I thought that the benefits are being outweighed by the negatives. And I think, especially with younger people, they're too embroiled in what others are doing and how others appear. When, I'm not saying always, but very often, the projection of what somebody's life is on social media is not what their life really is. And it can be disingenuous, and it can raise other people's expectations too high, which I think can create mental problems for them.
I love what I'm hearing about how, a lot of it was you finding your own path and continuing on that and not worrying what social media says, not worrying about it being about achieving a particular thing. But it really was like just getting one voice to hear about the animals, to have this one guiding light for yourself. I think that's really hard for people sometimes to not let all those other filters come in. Um, do you feel like that's just kind of how you're wired, or do you think that by doing this work over and over, it's kind of helped build that muscle of just not caring what other people think as much?
It's not that I don't care what other people think. It's that I realize that life is only about what I do. I walk in my shoes. I only have the right to judge
Mm,
myself. Perspectives can be completely different. It's like I say, if you hold up a photo or an object and you say, "What do you see there?" You might say, "Yeah, I see it," kind of. But if you different perspective on it is you see a really thin thing, and it's all about that perspective on how you're judging life. I've always been pretty different, if you like. I mean, going vegan at 6 years old, went vegetarian at 3 years old. I've always been kind of very focused in a different direction, and I have never found it hard to be different. I've
mm,
never want. It's not that I've never I wanted to be different, but my principles, my views, my values are very, very important to me, and I don't. I won't say I won't conform to what society expects of me, but I do realize that I need to be who I am, or I'm
mhm,
not going to be authentic. And it's really, really weird, actually. I was thinking about this, but a lot of the things that I have always done in my life, which have appeared absolutely off the wall to people, are now becoming a more mainstream view. Certainly with the veganism, definitely. The long distance running, the multi-stage races, people are now turning to those because for me it's a way of emptying out all your the stresses and strains of the world and literally focusing on just yourself. A to B, that's all you've got to think about. What's in that little pack is all you've got for a week. You have to run huge distances, stop running, and prepare to run huge distances the next day. So you don't have time to focus on things which you can't change. And it's like a life enhancing experience where you can come back rejuvenated. And also, it makes you very, very aware of the blessings that you have around you that sometimes, and I included, overlook. Running water, sanitation, a bed to sleep in. People get fixated, especially in the vegan community, on what I eat. I have always said, and I've said this before all this, the climate change and more awareness came on unfair distribution of global resources. Don't focus so much on what you eat. Be thankful you have anything to eat at all. Be thankful of the way you eat your food. And what I mean by that is my mum still prepares my food. I am very blessed for that. I've recently lost my dad. I had both parents. I was until
I'm
dad died.
sorry.
No, I mean he was elderly, and it was expected. It was still sad, but expected. I don't live in a war torn zone. I don't have a fear of food insecurity, particularly. I've always advocated for eating locally sourced, always understanding the blessing of having enough. Most people crave things that material things have no value. I mean, people say, "What's it like in these desert races?" And I say, "Well, imagine this: if you are running along and somebody walks over to you, come from nowhere, and said, 'Would you like this large gold bar, Fiona?' You would look at it and say, 'No, thank you. It's too heavy to carry. I have no use for it.' But a small bottle of water is the most precious gift because it is the gift of life. So I only eat one meal a day, and I don't snack in between meals. I just have fluids through the day and one meal in the evening. And the first time this was validated to me was I was in a major big race in Siberia and a marathon, and the Kenyan, the Ethiopian athletes were there, and they laid on a big lunch for us the day before the marathon. And one of the Kenyan coaches said to me after the IWF, we had a press conference, "Are you coming to the lunch?" And I said, "No, no, no, I don't actually eat lunch." And I was wondering whether to say it or not. And I thought, I've got to be true. I've got to be authentic. I said, "I don't eat lunch. I only eat one meal a day." And he looked at me and I thought, "Oh, here we go." And he said, "Ah, yeah, the warrior diet." And I looked at him and went, Yes.
Oh
Rory, I
yeah,
like the
that's
sound of
exactly
that.
what
Yeah,
I
I'll
was
go with
thinking.
that. I'll go
Yeah,
with that.
yeah, yeah.
And he said, "Oh, a lot of the Kenyan athletes do that. 1 meal a day, austerity."
Mm.
I've always said, and I'm absolutely appalling when I'm invited onto athletes panels because everyone else is micro analyzing their diet and what they eat and when they eat it and the kind of
The
Plato or
alkalinity of their water.
yeah, and I just don't do that. I listen to my body and I listen to what it's telling me and I interpret what it's telling me and I put that into action because we're all unique individuals. So I kind of say I don't do elaborate stretching exercises. And people are, oh, that's terrible. I said, no, think about it. I get up at 3:30 in the morning and I am physically on the go with the animals, carrying heavy weights. I do. I have thought a little bit about life more recently and interpreting the way I live is quite close to an animal. So I was watching one of the cats yesterday and he was playing in the hayloft and he was jumping and he was, sort of a really, really athletic cat that I've got called Atomic Kitten that just appeared at the sanctuary. And I thought, you know what? I'm not as athletic as you, and I can't grab that as an accolade. But I tend to live my life a little bit like that. I jump. I tend to climb gates. So I was reading an article about how hard it is for people to do chin ups, and I thought, no, it's not hard to do chin ups. I do loads of those every day, and I've got these little gates that have kind of a kind of a surround around them, so it's like a chin up bar, and every time I go through them, I do a chin up. Do you know what I mean? In the
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
And that's like kind of, I don't do formal weight training. And people look at me and say, oh, but your upper body, Fiona, you are so well defined. My upper body is outstrips my lower body any day. I mean, I really have got good definition. And I'm so honored to say, and I don't use the word proud because I'm not a proud person. I'm not proud of anything I've ever done. So, possibly starting vegan runners because it's such a community for vegans to meet. But I'm not proud of the reason that I've done most of the things, which is to advocate for animals. I wish I didn't have to advocate for them because I wish they weren't suffering. But I am pleased and honoured that any muscle that I've gained, particularly upper body, has been in the service of the animals rather than just in a gym like pumping iron, which is
Yeah.
fine for many people. I'm not judging anyone. This is the way I have lived my life, and
Mhm.
I'm glad and honoured and blessed that I've been able to do that.
But you even think about how fitness is such a modern idea. 100 years ago, when most people were on a farm or they're walking or they have a horse or like they didn't
Yeah,
have all the modern conveniences, like
yeah,
the idea of like, even going for a run, unless someone was, like a hunter or doing things like
yeah,
that, is such a modern idea. And then we wonder why, we have to go to yoga twice a week to feel like we can even touch our toes. And it's like, well,
yeah,
yeah, we don't live like the animals we have been for 50,000 years. And so
yeah.
even just thinking about diets and thinking about eating and it's interesting to think through how much has shifted even in 100 years. Fiona, the last question I have is, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
I think obviously probably what they already do know, that everyone's an individual and don't judge others. It's very hard to get, but it must be an impossible job to get in the mindset and head of people around you, because I, I, I can only really talk about myself. Um, I find it hard to give advice, to be honest with you,
Oh,
because I've lived a life whereby it's so unique, and I think everyone lives a life that is unique to them and personal to them. um it's hard to know how to give, yeah, advice to others, because I sometimes struggle to give advice to myself, if you know what I mean. I don't really. The world is a very, very strange place, and you have to adapt, and your opinion and your perspective can be completely changed in one conversation or one meeting or one moment, that you have to move with that all the time. And I always say to people, move forward. Don't think that you're standing still, because others will be moving forward around you. You'll be getting left behind and going backwards. So
hmm.
it's truly very difficult. I know people look at my life and they think it is extraordinarily strange. I never take a day off. I do this work every single day. I have never been on a holiday in I've never been in a restaurant. I've never been to a cinema, apart from the dreaded running for good. I don't in it's hard. I don't really I do enjoy the fact that I'm able to help others, but as for finding things that I enjoy doing, I don't enjoy enjoying myself, if that makes any sense. If I'm not
Oh,
pushing very hard, it's no good to me.
well, and I feel like so much of what you've said has to do with running, has to do with animals, but also has to do with life and spirituality and ways of thinking in the world and non-judgment. It's just been so wonderful. If people want to watch the movie Running for Good, or read that book, or in some way support Tower Hill Stables Animal Sanctuary, how can they connect with you?
Um, Email probably the best. I don't know all the hashtags for the social media. Oakes Fiona or Fiona Oakes. I'm not sure which one. But if you search Fiona Oakes and Tower Hill, you will get to me. And if
Yeah.
any message, anybody wants any advice, anybody wants me to give an opinion, and many people do from around the world, because they think I think it's sometimes very refreshing in terms of I'm not focused on selling myself. I'm focused on selling the message that I'm trying to promote, which is peace and compassion and empathy. I think empathy is the most important word for me. Putting yourself in the situation of others and trying to understand how they are suffering. That's the most
Mm.
important thing. So, yeah, you'll get to me and I will be more than glad to help anyone. I don't charge for anything I do. I just want to leave this world a tiny little bit better place than it came into it.
Mhm. So wonderful. Well, your website is towerhillstables.org. We'll put links to all of that in the show notes as well. Fiona, thank you so much for being on the Practice podcast.
You're very welcome.
But, shows like this are just so inspirational for me personally. Just that idea of non-judgment, of not being able to walk in anyone's shoes but our own, is one of my many takeaways from this. Being that we did this on video, I wasn't even taking notes like I often do. And so I'm going to have to go back and re-listen to this, because I feel like there's so many things here that Fiona said that to me just stand out for life, our private practices, making the world better in the little corner that we each have. We couldn't do this show without our sponsors, and Thrizer is our sponsor for today's episode. If you're doing private pay and you are sick of super bills, you're sick of insurance calls, you're sick of reimbursements, any of that, I want to tell you all about Thrizer. Make sure you check them out, because Thrizer is an amazing way to automate your claim submissions, manage claims end to end, and the best part is people can pay their copay for your sessions all within it. Head on over to thrizer.com/partners/Joe. Again, that's thrizer.com/partners/Joe, and they're going to waive the first $2,500 in credit card fees. So it's awesome. Use promo code POTP for the free trial. Again, that's thrizer.com/partners/Joe. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music. And this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.